We'll do it live. We'll do it live. We are live. Okay, I'm just I cleared all my cookies last time, so I got to see if all my stuff is working here. I would like to have some chats working. Looks like the chats are working. Welcome to live chat. Remember to guard your privacy. Abide by our community guidelines. Okay, so the RNC has declared war on Christianity. The RNC has declared war on Christianity, particularly the GOP establishment. They've declared war. They've declared war, and that is what the RNC has become. It's become a vehicle for the haters of Christ to wage a war against America. Why have they attached themselves to our? Well, I guess it was never ours. If you think of the Republican Party as, people, I remember, what was that one guy who ran for president? He was the little guy from, where was he from? Rhode Island? Howard Dean. Howard Dean had a short-lived run for president. He was a Democrat. And he came out and said that the Republican Party is the white Christian party. And people believed that. And people have believed that as long as I've been alive. I've tended to think of the Republicans that way because you've got the evangelical movement within the Republican Party. So you tend to think of it as the white Christian party, the Republican Party. But it's not that. And it never was that. It was never that. It was never that. The Republican Party was never the white Christian American party. It was never that. It was always an international party. It was always the party of international banking corporations, particularly. It was always the party of Jewish Freemasonry and, I guess, regular Freemasonry, because there is a difference. Because the Jews established a Freemason order in 1843 in New York. So it's been the party of New York and B'nai B'rith, which is the Anti-Defamation League, which is the World Jewish Congress, which is a lot of these other affiliated organizations that are operating in Ukraine and operating in Brussels and operating in Davos and operating in London and operating in New York and San Francisco and down in Florida and all over the place, and in China, in Beijing. Yes. So I found the Republican convention, which I've been paying some attention to. I'm not saying I completely hate it. I'm not saying I completely. I'll give it a 5 out of 10. There were touching moments. There were moments that literally brought tears to my eyes. Some of them, for instance, I'll give you one example, is when Sarah Huckabee was talking about her relationship with Donald Trump. That was touching. When some of the family members who'd lost their children in Afghanistan talked about what happened and how they missed their children. That was touching. Aside from that, not much. I thought Don Jr.'s speech was okay. I thought his daughter's speech, which is Trump's granddaughter's speech, was okay. I thought that was good. I'm looking forward to what Trump has to say, and that's about it. But what we've seen, okay, the problem with the Republican Party is that the Republican Party. Well, what have we also seen at the RNC? We saw that Amber Rose lady, who's a full-blown Satanist, and I'm talking same type of stuff as that Hillary Clinton is involved in with John Podesta and Marina Abramovic. They're into rituals called spirit cooking. Now, I don't know that Amber Rose. I don't know, but I kind of presume that she might be affiliated with those people because she's into it. She talks about it, and she takes pictures of herself covered in blood naked in like dungeons and stuff. It's really sick. She's like a dedicated Satanist. So she spoke at the RNC, as well as, you had Harmeet Dillon, who's a nice lady, doing her Sikh stuff and her different religion. So here's the problem with all that stuff is I actually don't have any kind of animosity towards people of other religions. I've studied all the religions in the world as much as I could, as much as I was interested in them. And so I myself, I'm probably one of the world's leading experts in religion. And so in different cultures and different races. And so it's not that I don't like them, but one of the things I learned when I was studying religion and all the different races and cultures is that religion is actually comes out of the race. And so what happens with what's happening with this whole globalist kind of global UN religion type of thing is it lessens all the religions in favor of, well, what can we all agree on so that we can have this empire? So it's really just an imperial philosophy. And it's not really having anything to do with the actual traditions of the people. So it's so here's what I'm saying. When I grew up in America, we were the Americans. And so just like you have the Americans, then you have these other cultures, whether it's the Chinese, the Vietnamese, the Korean, or the different races in Europe, and like the Scottish and the Irish and the people in Holland versus the people in Berlin. It's like people have their own traditions and their own cultural stuff. That's actually where religion comes from. So there's a difference between religion and philosophy, because philosophy is a philosophy doesn't have to be tied to a religion, but religion comes out of the race and its culture and its traditions that go back hundreds and thousands of years. And so if you're going to have a society, the society has certain traditions. So when you have a convention and it's like, and then like, what are we? Are we even a people? Because if you have a convention and then you have like a certain, let's say the Americans, well, the Americans aren't the Sikhs. I'm sorry, we're not. We're not these other people. We're not any other race, actually. And so when you get up there and you like talk about your ideals and your thing, well, that's good for you. I mean, I think it's respectable, but it has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with me. It's like, well, we all share these ideals. Okay, but that's your religion. This is not my religion. Why are we mixing this? The reason why we're mixing it is because it's a UN program. And what the idea is that there will be no nations, there will be no races. It'll just be a bunch of individuals. So the whole idea behind what America has become, and which is spreading to Europe, and isn't spreading. It's spread to Europe by force with World War II and the bombing of Dresden and the bombing of Germany and the enforcement of individualism. Which means there's no more races, there's no more nations. We're just a bunch of individuals. We're just a bunch of individuals. So that's all we are. We're just individuals. And so that's kind of where that's what the Republican Party promotes. They're promoting this idea that we are all just individuals, and that's it. There's nothing else. We're just individuals. And we're just individuals, but notice how there's one group that's not just individuals. They're a group, they're a race, they're a people, they have a nation, and they're attaching themselves to our politics. We're just individuals. And as individuals, we've got this other group that says they're a nation, but they're the only ones allowed to be a nation. Marco Rubio can go up and give speeches about how we're all individuals and every individual. But when it comes to his favorite sponsor, then they're a race and they're free to exterminate everybody on the face of the earth, including Americans, right? So I just found this whole RNC. Okay, so let's just take what happened. Let's just look at the news on what the RNC convention is saying, right? I put in RNC convention into a Google search, RNC convention Israel, because Israel was a big topic at the RNC yesterday. So here's New York Times. GOP puts Israel and anti-Semitism front and center, courting U.S. Jews. Haaretz, as Trump taps America first VP, top Jewish Republican GOP, is the only pro-Israel. I can't read the rest. I'm just reading the headlines that's on Google. RNC crowd erupts in cheers for Israel as Jewish speaker draws contrast. They've got a picture of a Jewish, a hexagram flag. I don't know. We'll call it a hexagram flag. Huffington Post, with pro-Israel push at the RNC, Republicans make a play to win over Jews. So yeah, and then they had the speaker. The speaker was a guy who's a first-generation American, he calls himself, and he's an Orthodox Jew, and he voted for Bernie Sanders, and he goes to Harvard, but now he's joined us. Well, he hasn't. Well, then whatever us is, because I'm not part of any of this, man. This has nothing to do with America. It's like, it's just a bunch of stuff that has nothing to do with me, right? And he says, we're going to fight anti-Semitism. Why? Have you heard of the Bill of Rights? People have a right to free speech. Why do we need to fight anti-Semitism? What's the point of that? Well, the point of it is we have this other group, and they don't believe in all they believe in is whatever is for them. It's their thing, it's their race, it's their culture, it's their religion. You oppose it, you get crushed. While everyone else is like, I'm an individual. I'm an individual. We're all individuals. And you've got this thing attaching itself to what should be. You got to understand something. Tucker Carlson was with Don Jr. and he was with Dan Bongino, and he talked about how there is a systematic homicidal plan to replace white people all over the world, not just in America, but in Europe and all of Europe, anywhere where this group is operating. Ireland, England, Scotland, Wales, Germany, France, Spain, Greece, like everywhere, right? They're doing this everywhere. So when people say to me, like people tell me, Brian, America is the greatest country in the world. Okay, it was pretty good, and now it's not that great. You know, it's not, because I don't want to be just an individual among a bunch of individuals with no culture and there's no culture, there's no race, there's no religion, there's no unifying thing other than money. We're all unified by the money, right? This is not a real civilization where we're just unified by the Federal Reserve note that's produced by the same group called the B'nai B'rith over in New York that run the Federal Reserve Bank. And you've got Janet Yellen and all these other people that work there. And like that's not a culture. That's not anything worth. That's not worth anything. So, and then you go, well, if you don't like miscegenation, which means all the races mixing together. If you don't like it, why don't you just go back to Europe? And I'd be like, well, okay, can I go back there? Well, I'm sorry, but even if you go back there, when you go back to your ancestral homeland, it's the same thing, because it's run by the same people, and they've destroyed that too. So there's nowhere to go back to, because they bombed Europe. They invaded and conquered and destroyed Europe in World War II. And then ever since then, they've had NATO operating there, enforcing this system run by this group of people. And so then over time, what they've done is they've made Europe exactly like America, with all of the racial mixing. So you can't just be Irish and live in Ireland, right? You can't just do that. You can't just go to Ireland. Like if you said, hey, if you don't like it here, why don't you just go back where you came from? Okay, let's say you're Irish. Okay, a lot of people on my grandmother was Irish and French, and the Hanlons and the Deans, and they were Irish. So let's say I was part Irish, and I said, okay, I'm going to go back to Ireland. Well, if I go there now, I'm not really that Irish. I'm not even Irish, really. I don't consider myself Irish, but let's say I was going to say I was Irish. I'm going to go to Ireland, and I go there, and but now the UN has brought in people from Africa to run and populate Ireland, so I can't go there. So that's taken away from me. Now I'm also on my father's side. I'm very French, right? So I can go back to France. Can I go to France, or can I go? My mother's side is Dutch and Germanic. Can I go back to there? No, I can't, because they're doing the same thing in France. You go to Paris, it doesn't look like Paris. It doesn't look like Paris looked in 1940, where it's a bunch of white people speaking French. That's not what Paris is now. No, it's Africans. It's people from the Middle East. It's the same thing that you have in Southern California and Los Angeles. So everything's going to look like Los Angeles. The whole world's just going to look like Los Angeles. And nobody, and you're not allowed to form a government or a real religion that's not controlled by Washington, D.C. and the CIA and the FBI and the B'nai B'rith and the Anti-Defamation League. Does that sound like, what is that? So you tell me, America is the greatest country in the world. That's because we bombed all the other countries, right? If everyone else is dead, then yes, you're the greatest, because everyone else is dead. You're comparing yourself to a dead body, right? You're comparing yourself to a dead body and go, look how great I am, right? You weigh 400 pounds and you're covered in, acne, and you smell, and you're like, I'm the greatest human in the world. Yeah, because because everyone else is dead. You killed everybody else. And now you're gloating about how great you are. You're damn ugly is what you are. You're ugly and you smell. Okay? That's what you are. Who am I talking to? I'm just for YouTube's, I'm not talking to a person when I just said that, just so YouTube understands. I'm talking to an idea. The idea is ugly and the idea smells and the idea is disgusting. So, yeah, you're like, wow, Brian, you really seem to hate America. I'm an American. See, if you come from some other country and you start talking bad about my country or my flag, I would be highly offended, because I am an American, you see? And I can talk this way about America because I am it. I'm the thing. You're not the thing, right? If you're not the thing, then you can't talk about me and my family the way I can. All right. So anyway, so the RNC has declared war on Christianity and the white race. So I'm happy. Okay, Trump. I'm so glad Trump is okay. I'm really glad he's okay, and I'm looking forward to voting for him. And even though with all of Trump's problems, the reason why I'm excited about voting for him is because he actually likes people. Like, if you listen to what Trump's, like how people talk about Trump that know him, is that he's like a really great person who really cares about other people. And like, he uses his wealth that he's generated over his lifetime to care about other people. That seems to be like his main thing, is that he actually cares about other people. And so I'm actually excited. I'm actually excited about voting for him for that reason. However, when you look, but the GOP is a different thing. So whether Trump gets elected or doesn't get elected, once he's elected, I don't see a future for the Republican Party outside of Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump is the beginning and the end of the Republican Party. There's nobody else in the Republican Party that's going to be able to effectively make any changes, because what the GOP right now is offering, if you watch the RNC events so far, is what it's offering is more of what it's already doing. It's offering you more of the same, right? What are they talking about at the GOP? We need a war with Iran. We need to be tough with Russia. We need to fight the Russians. We need to fight the Iranians. We need to fight Hamas. We need to fight Hezbollah. We need to start a war with China. So like, it's literally all the same, but with Trump is what they're trying to do. Now, I don't necessarily, so the RNC isn't run by Trump, really. Trump's running his own stuff, right? The RNC is run by the GOP establishment. It's not just Trump. So I'm not blaming the RNC on Trump. I'm not blaming it on Trump. Trump is like involved in like this hostile takeover, and they're trying to murder him. And the RNC had a vested interest in trying to get rid of Trump. So I'm not blaming Trump for all of this. But what I see with the with last night was it was extremely Jewish. It was just like it was all about Jews and Judaism and the state of Israel and fighting anti-Semitism, and this is all the same. So that whole line of propaganda, anti-Semitism, fighting the Nazis, fighting for Israel, fighting Hamas, fighting Iran. This is all. Fighting the Russians. That's actually part of it. This is all the Anti-Defamation League, which is a Jewish Masonic order. The Anti-Defamation League is an arm of B'nai B'rith, which is a Jewish Masonic order founded in New York in 1843. Okay, and it was set up. In 1843 after the Napoleonic Wars, when the Rothschilds came to power in Europe with the Warburgs and the Schiffs and everybody, and they came to America and they established B'nai B'rith, and then B'nai B'rith was involved in the establishment of the Republican Party because Andrew Jackson opposed a central banking scheme. So Andrew Jackson was like the last Democrat, the Democrat of the American Democrat president. People think it was John Kennedy. No, it wasn't John Kennedy. It was Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson was the last effective Democrat president, because after Andrew Jackson, you got Abraham Lincoln. And when you got Abraham Lincoln, you also got Karl Marx, and you got a central bank. What people don't understand is that Karl Marx was a Republican, and Karl Marx, in his book Das Kapital, I don't know if I haven't read Das Kapital, but I've talked to enough communists to know that Karl Marx basically was promoting the idea that we needed a central bank to control the currency. Well, who wanted that? B'nai B'rith. B'nai B'rith wanted that. The Rothschilds wanted that. The Warburgs wanted that. The Schiffs, the Warburgs, the Schiffs, the Rothschilds, the B'nai B'rith Masonic system that had come to power in New York. They wanted that. They wanted that. They wanted a central bank. Karl Marx wanted a central bank. So when you think of Karl Marx, you think, oh, Karl Marx must have been an anti-capitalist. But you have to understand what the Republican Party really was in its origins is anti-monarchy. It was anti-monarchy. It wasn't necessarily anti-capitalist as it was anti-monarchy. And so the communist plan of Karl Marx, because communism can mean a lot of different things. Communism can mean a bunch of people living on a commune and collectively and working on a farm collectively. But it's not, or it's just organized by groups. It's like a social group. So this is what we think of as communism. TM trademark is Karl Marx, right? It's the Karl Marx program. And Karl Marx was a Republican. He was anti-monarchy. So he was involved in the overthrow of monarchies and the establishment of a central banking system, which today we call capitalism. It's called capitalism. And it includes private capital working with government. So it's a merger of private capitalists working with the government. This is the Karl Marx program. So this was what was set up as a result of the Civil War. And so when you look at the Republican Party is about money. It's about no race, just individuality. So there can't be any race. There cannot be any race, and there can't be a religion. There can be no races. It has to be just individuals. There can be no religion. It has to be everybody's religion. So you've basically this is a form of genocide and ethnic cleansing. No races, no religions, just money. That's the Republican Party. No races, no religions, just money. That's the American dream. That's the American dream. And they're doing that to America, and they're doing that to Europe. They're doing that to Australia. They're doing it to everybody. Right? So that's why when that one guy got up there and he started talking about in the military, we don't care what color you are or what your religion is or if you're gay or straight, because bullets don't care when the enemy's shooting at you. Okay, so what are you fighting for? You're not fighting for your religion. You're not fighting for God. You're not fighting for your own race. You're not fighting. So you're just fighting for what? Money? What are you fighting for? Right? You're not. You don't care about, I don't know, gay marriage. That doesn't matter to you because you don't care about God. You don't care if babies are born and then sold to gay men like Dave Rubin. So none of that matters. It's just about what? What is it about? What is it really about? So it's about money. And this group that runs the GOP and runs the Democrat Party, okay, it's the same people. It's the exact same people. You gotta understand. Think about it. When Abraham Lincoln and the Republicans won the Civil War, who did they defeat? They defeated the Democrats, and they had all the power. And so they implemented an agenda. And that agenda had to do with setting up a new Justice Department in Washington, D.C., with a new mandate to fight racism, right? So there could be no races. And to establish a central bank. So that's what's happening. Let's look at some more news. RNC convention. J.D. Vance, world where does, okay. Oh, here's a perfect example. J.D. Vance's world. Where does Trump VP pick stand on Israel, Ukraine, China? Well, I think we know. And then here's this guy, Shabos Kestenbaum, speaks at 2024 Republican, whatever. So the whole thing was just, so what I'm trying to say is, if you notice, the Republican National Convention, the only race of people that were allowed to stand on stage and talk about their race and the survival of their race was the hexagram people. Everyone else was equal. All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others, right? Animal Farm. You ever watch that or read that book? I watched it as a film when I was a kid in school, Animal Farm. All the animals are equal, but then some animals are more equal. Those are the hexagram people. They're more equal. You see, we're all equal, right? So if you're black and you're white, or you're Hispanic, or you're Asian and you're Hindu, or you're Sikh, or you're gay, or you're straight, or you're a lesbian, or you're transsexual, or you do these different things and you speak at drag shows, okay, you're all equal. Those are all the equal people, right? And according to the guy that spoke about, being in the military, and I was a Green Beret, and when the bullets are flying at you, they don't care if you're gay or straight or, whatever, or what race you are, or who cares what religion you are. Those bullets are all flying at you based on what? What? What's the point of being in the foxhole? Tell me. Why are you in that foxhole? That's a stupid place to be. But the hexagram people got on stage and said, we are the hexagram race. We have a right to our race, and we're under attack. And we demand that the U.S. government kill our enemies. Anyone who speaks out against us, they need to be sued or thrown in prison. Anyone who fights us, they are to be exterminated. This is the message of this one particular race of people among all the different people that were at the RNC convention. Yeah. So what was I saying? Oh, the Kestenbaum guy. Oh, okay. So here's the other thing. Kestenbaum guy, he's from Harvard, right? And so he said he's an Orthodox Jew and he's from Harvard. Okay. And he was going after the leadership at Harvard, right? Because they're bad. And he's had this great awakening. Okay. He's woken up to this thing of the BLM and the Antifa and how the left, that he voted for Bernie Sanders. Okay. But now he's figured it all out. Right? Now he's figured out. But you know who runs? Can I tell you who runs Harvard? As far as sponsors, let's talk about sponsors. Who sponsors Harvard? Can we talk about that? Can we talk about that? If you're in the chats, let me know if you know who sponsors Harvard. Give me some names. Give me some names. I'll give you some names. How about a guy named Les Wexner? You ever heard of Les Wexner? You ever heard of Les Wexner at Harvard? Les Wexner, Harvard. Who's Les Wexner? What does he do? Well, have you ever heard of Jeffrey Epstein? Have you heard of Jeffrey Epstein? Because there's a guy named Les Wexner who's maybe he's a trillionaire, maybe he's a billionaire. I don't know. He's got a lot of money. He's got a lot of money. Les Wexner does. Lots of money. Plenty of money. Guess who had no money? Guess who didn't have a dime? Jeffrey Epstein. Didn't have any money. None of the money that Jeffrey Epstein has was his. Okay. All the money that Jeffrey Epstein had was Les Wexner's money. All of it. Every dime. Every penny. You know that Jeffrey Epstein he was a financial consultant with one client. Just one client. Jeffrey Epstein had one financial investor that he was investing money for, just one. And that man's name was Les Wexner, right? So all of the money that Jeffrey Epstein had, he got from Les Wexner, from Harvard. Because here's what you got to understand. When the LGBT, BLM, Antifa were attacking Trump, when Trump was in office and they had the Summer of Love and all the violence and the burning and the murders and the riots and the people being beaten and attacked and buildings being burned down and federal buildings being attacked and police stations being burned to the ground. See, that was all sponsored by the same people at Harvard, like Les Wexner and others who sponsored BLM. It's not a secret that the university sponsored BLM, and that Les Wexner group at Harvard sponsored BLM and put all these people in position at Harvard on purpose to promote their agenda, which is the agenda of BLM LGBT. What happened was when the Gaza situation broke out, they realized that this was against them. So they just fired all those people and they attacked them, and then now they're going to sue them all, right? But it's not like it's the same thing they do to other countries. You got to understand something. So in other countries, right, if they don't like the leader, they get some army to overthrow that leader, right? The military. So the CIA will go in and overthrow that guy and put in some other guy. And as long as he plays ball, he's in charge. As long as he keeps their agenda going, he's in charge. And if he stops doing that, then they get rid of him with another coup or an insurrection, and they put somebody else in. And they do the same thing over at Harvard. So the people that run Harvard were backing the BLM, LGBT, Antifa until it turned on them, and then they just got rid of them. And now they're like, oh, we had this big epiphany. We get it now. We're on your side. Hey, you're not on my side. Why are you attaching yourself to me? Go get away from me. You're not on my side. I know you're not on my side. You were just sponsoring people to kill me when you were voting for Bernie Sanders and you were backing BLM, LGBT, Antifa to go around burning the country down. So, but now you're on my side. Now you're speaking at the RNC convention. You see how that works? Now they're literally they're at the RNC and they're giving speeches. Okay, this is why, aside from Donald Trump, who I like, there's nothing to the Republican Party is just going to be more of the same of what you're already getting. War with Russia. Why do you want a war with Russia? Do you want a war? Is there anybody in my chats that wants a war with Russia? Do you want a war with Russia? I don't. What do you have against Russia? What do you have against Russia? I know what you have against Russia. Your religion and your race. Because this has been going on since the long time. It's been going on for, I don't know, Russia for 1,000 years. But let's take American policy towards Russia. When did the American government start a policy of war with Russia? The American government started a policy of war with Russia around 1880. which was after the Civil War, and the Republican Party came to power. And one of the first things they did was they started a war. They started a war footing with Russia, and they started a plan to get rid of the Tsar. We're talking 1880, or going back to the 1860s. The Republican Party, having defeated the South through an international cabal of communists from German communists and Karl Marx and Abraham Lincoln and August Willich, who's a communist. They started a program to get on a war footing with Russia as far back as 1880. And what was the excuse in their own writings that are somewhere in the government files, because I've read them. I've read reports on them that were written by people who'd read the files, and historians that went back and read the files. What did they say the reason why we had to have a war? What was wrong with the Russians? What was wrong with the Tsar? Why did the U.S. government in 1880s begin this policy of we need a war with Russia? Well, the reason they gave in the papers that they're writing is because the way that the Russian government treated Jews. That is why, as far back as 1880, that is why the U.S. government had a war footing and a policy of regime change against Russia. Just like they had a policy of regime change against another country that's similar sounding, which is called Prussia with a P. So you had Prussia, which is basically the Germans, and then you had Russia, which was the Tsar. And the U.S. had a policy of regime change against the Germans, Prussians, in 1848. That's what the 1848. That's the 1848 revolt, right? You look at the German flag today. What is it? It's what they call red, black, and shit. Sorry, I mean mustard. I mean yellow or whatever. So that's the flag of the communist revolution of 1848 that was led by Karl Marx. This is why Karl Marx is buried, and his tomb is in London, because Karl Marx was an anti-monarchist Republican who promoted this idea of a central bank that would control the currency through a central bank that would be a merger of private and government groups working together to issue the currency. And this was the plan. This is what the Rothschilds and so forth wanted. But anyway, let's look at the news. RNC convention. So we've got this guy Lee Zeldin from New York, and we've got the hostages. We heard about the hostages. So we have to. So basically, what the RNC is gearing up for is a war with the enemies of the hexagram people. That's it. So what does this have to do with me? Nothing. So I need a political party that has something to do with me. And what I care about actually is the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, the Founding Fathers, and this whole culture that came from Europe, and that has nothing to do with the hexagram and fighting with all the different Middle Eastern tribes. I don't even want to say. I'm not going to use bad words. I don't care about all that stuff. I don't care about any of that stuff, because it has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with the survival of America, which comes from my people. I'm French. Okay. I'm mostly French, let's say. French, Dutch. French and the Dutch were colonists that colonized North America and the Caribbean and parts of Africa. So we were here a long time. Louisiana, right? Canada, Quebec. But none of this stuff with the Middle East and fighting all these different Arab tribes and the Muslims, it's all a complete waste of my time. So this is your political party. The real question is, why am I in it? What? It has nothing to do with me. Why am I registered with this party? Other than Donald Trump, who I still care about, because I think he's a good person, because I think he really cares about people, because I think that he will at least stop the bleeding that's happening in America and hopefully reverse some of the damage that's been done over the last 100+ years. I hope he can do that. I hope he can reverse a lot of the damage that's been done to Europe and a lot of the damage that's been done to North America and the Anglosphere. I hope he can reverse some of the damage. That's about it. That's why I'll support him. But other than that, I need a political party I can be part of, because it's not this one. It's not the Democrat Party. It's not the Green Party. It's not the Communist Party USA. It's not the Libertarians. They're a complete waste of time. The Libertarians are basically the same as, like, the Libertarians run. The Libertarian ideology is really the ideology of individualism, and it's what's causing a lot of these problems. It's individuality. We're all individuals. That's a libertarian ideology. It's worthless. Totally worthless. And I love being an individual, but you can't. You're not going to survive as an individual. You have to survive as a larger group, unless you live on a deserted island or unless you live out in the woods somewhere. Okay. But the people who are going to perpetuate civilization aren't living out in the woods. They're not living out in the middle of the desert. They're living in the big cities. They're controlling the big cities. They're controlling the commerce. They're controlling the industry. So unless we're doing that for ourselves and for our own future and our own future progeny, the offspring, unless you're doing that, you're wasting your time. You're completely wasting your time. And that's what the Republican Party looks like to me, is a gigantic waste of everybody's time. Now, as far as Russia goes, they want to start a war with Russia. Okay. Now, who are some of the people? Now, we can't just blame the hexagram people for everything, because there's also the Pope also wants to have a war with Russia. The Pope supports all of the individuality, interreligious, interrace mixing of Europe. Why? Because he's part of that syndicate. It's the syndicate is the hexagram mafia and the Jesuit order, which has always been anti-monarchy. As soon as the monarchies started to become a problem for the Pope became anti-monarchy. He's like, you're anti-Pope, I'm anti-monarchy. The Jesuit order is anti-monarchy. The Jesuit order took out the monarchies with the hexagram mafia and the communist movement, which was all kind of bonded around the Masonic system. See, so I would say that could really be the syndicate would be, because it all happened through the Freemason lodges and the Freemason system, but not just them. The thing about the Freemasons is they had a system where any religion could participate. So you just had to believe in God. You didn't have to believe in Jesus Christ was God. You could believe in any religion. So if you look at the Republican convention, it really looks like a Freemason cult, is what it is. It's a Freemason cult where, except the hexagram people are the supreme. That's the master race of the Republican Freemason cult. The Freemason cult of Republican Party has the hexagram as the racial supremacy group. That's the racial. It's not the Germans. It's not a Nazi. It's not a Nazi conspiracy. It's not Hitler and the Germans. These people that say Hitler really won World War II, and then the CIA brought in the Germans to work at NASA and in the CIA, and they had them working over in the UN, and they had them in. You know why? Because those Germans had nowhere to go because they didn't have a government, and so they just said, you know what? Okay, I'll come work for you so I can have some kind of a future. It wasn't, but they had to abandon their ideology. And even if they still had those ideas, they could never implement them. That's the whole point. These people that think Operation Paper, it all started with Operation Paperclip, and they brought the Nazis in. They had them in the CIA. Those are the Nazis that were willing to join the other side. Those are the Nazis that said, "Fine, I'll give up my ideals and I'll join you. I'll come and work for I'll work for the Anti-Defamation League. I'll work for B'nai B'rith. I'll work for the people that just killed all my brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers and grandparents and children. I'll come work for you. Those are the quote unquote Nazis that joined the United Nations and the NATO, because you think, oh, NATO, that's a Nazi organization. No, it's not. Because the head of NATO said that the purpose of it, I don't know his name right now. He's the British guy. He said the purpose of NATO is to keep the Russians out, to keep the Germans down, and keep the Americans in. So the whole purpose of NATO the entire time, what was that guy's name? I can't remember his name. I think it was like the first NATO guy. He said the purpose of NATO is to keep the Russians out, keep the Americans in, and keep the Germans down. Keep the Germans down. Have they succeeded? That's why anytime I see a German saying, I support NATO, I think, are you a traitor? You are. Do you know you're a traitor? Well, you're wearing a flag of the 1848 revolution on you're flying the 1848 communist Marxist revolution that overthrew the German monarchy and overthrew your religion, which at the time was I believe that the leader who I believe he was a Lutheran. I don't know all these kings' names and stuff. I'm just saying, right? The purpose of NATO is to keep the Germans down, to keep the Americans in, to keep the Russians out, to keep the Germans down. So how can you be a German and support NATO? How can you be a German and support NATO? That doesn't make any sense. If the whole purpose of the organization is to kill your own people, to keep your own race down, how can you call yourself a German? You're a traitor. You're a traitor. So anyway, what else is happening here in the media? I'm arguing with Muslims. Let's see what they have to say. Here's a Muslim that says, why Alpha and Omega, referring to Jesus in the book of Revelations, are no longer valid and now considered part of so many Bible forgery. They always talk like this. So this guy has a question. Why did they remove Alpha and Omega from Revelations 1:11 in the New International Version? It's like that's the question this Muslim has. Why did they remove the term Alpha and Omega? He's like, this is proof the Bible's no good. Why did they remove Alpha and Omega from the New International Version? And it's like, because the New International Version took it out because they don't believe in Jesus Christ, because they're based in New York. They're based in New York. The people that wrote the New International Version are based in New York. And they're funded by the same people that are still funding the big mega churches. Just so you know, you look at these guys like Joel Osteen or whoever they are. I don't know all these people's names. They're freaks, okay? I'm telling you, they're freaks. But the thing, like you look at them, you think, oh, they must be ripping off their parishioners, right? They must be stealing all this money from these poor people or working class people that come in and they love God, so they give these preachers all their money, right? That's not how it works, right? When you see these big mega churches, they've got these big arenas filled with people, and they've got these huge mansions all over America, and they've got like private jets. Okay, those pastors are funded by the same big banking and foundations, philanthropic foundations, that are behind NPR and public radio and the wars that are going on in the Middle East and the wars that are going on all over the world. They're part. So the people that are sponsoring them are actually the weapons, banking, medical supplies, pharmaceutical company, that whole complex of people. They've been bankrolling the pastors in America, starting with the rise of the Rothschilds. And so what they did is they got control of the churches, and they used the churches to promote this whole the whole thing that I just described to you, which is the Republican Party, which is it's like a Freemason cult where everybody's equal, except at the top there is a master ruling class race, a new aristocracy. That's what it is. It's the new aristocracy. You know where I got that term? From a Masonic book that talked about Jesuits and Freemasonry. In fact, I think it's volume 1 of Mackey's History of Freemasonry, volume 1, chapter 31. Chapter 31, the Jesuits and Freemasonry. It talked about how they were going to set up a new aristocracy. A new aristocracy. And that's what, so when you look at the Republican Party last night, and you've got, we're all equal, right? The whites are equal to the Hispanics and the Mexicans and the brown people and the black people, and all our religions are all the same, except there's this one group of people with the hexagram, and they're the master race, and they rule all over us, and they tell us they're gonna crush all of the enemies of their people, and they need us to go out there and fight and join the military, and then go shipped off all over the world so they can run everything. That's the new aristocracy. That's the aristocracy that replaced the kings of Europe. That's the aristocracy that replaced the kings of Europe. This is what it says in a book called The History of Freemasonry by a guy named Mackey, who was a Freemason. It's volume 1, chapter 31, the Jesuits and Freemasonry. The Jesuits were seeking to set up a new aristocracy because the kings of Europe were no longer viable as an aristocracy because they wanted their own independence. They wanted their own independence. So anyway, where was I? Let me get back. Okay, so I'm arguing with a Muslim. Okay, so the Muslim says, why did they remove Alpha and Omega from the Bible in the New International Version and in the New Living Translation? Why? Because the churches, since around the time of the rise of Rothschild in America, 1800s, became taken over. So you have all these big mega churches, and they don't get their money from, they get some money from their parishioners. The parishioners donate some money, but that doesn't buy all the houses and the jets and the arenas and all the stuff. That doesn't buy all that. All that money comes from JP Morgan Chase and Pfizer and all these different pharmaceutical corporations and the Rand Corporation and the Annenbergs and the Gates Foundation and the, you know what I mean? Like the Carnegie, like all these big foundation, banking, industrial, medical complex. That's who, just like they give money to Zelensky and they say, you're going to be a billionaire if you just do what we say. They did the same thing to Christianity. They wanted the Christians to replace the worship of Jesus Christ with worshiping the Jewish people as the master race. And so when you go, so what happened was the Rothschild banking families and the B'nai B'rith and the Anti-Defamation League that's in front of it, they got control of Christianity and they bankroll. Now, who taught me this? Jordan Maxwell. But they got control of the he was a friend of mine. They got control of the churches just by buying them off the pastors. They go, you're going to be a star. You're going to be rich. We're going to give you, we're going to give you millions of dollars. And just, we want you to teach Christianity in this way, that Jews are the chosen people. And you don't worship Christ. You worship, you worship Jews and the Jews and what we're going to do in the future. And we've got these big plans. And, that's the way the whole system is set up. That's the way it's set up. Let's go back to this Muslim guy. So anyway, that's why they took certain passages out of these translations. The only way you can read a true translation of the Christian Bible is to read the Greek, the original Greek, because the Bible was written in Greek. It wasn't written in Aramaic. There's later, maybe there was some copies in Aramaic, but basically the people there at the time wrote everything in Greek. They spoke Greek since 300 BC when Alexander invaded. But anyway, let's go. Let's see what this Muslim guy is arguing with me about, if I can. Oh, yes, they don't know. Okay, so I'm going to tell. Here's an interesting thing. I like to argue with Muslims. So this Muslim says, I checked all the Old Testament Bible and I never seen a single name of Jesus there. So I replied, Jesus is the light in Genesis 1:3. So when you read Genesis 1:3 and it says, God said, let there be light. That's actually Jesus. Jesus is the light in Genesis 1:3. How do I know that? Because I read John 1 through 5. So if you want to know where Jesus is in the Old Testament, start by reading John 1, and it says that Jesus is the Word of God, and then the Word of God is the light, and the darkness comprehended it not. I'm paraphrasing. So what that is that's comparing it to Genesis 1:3. Genesis 1:3, God said, let there be light. And when you're reading that, you're thinking of this is the creation of the universe, so that means there's a physical light, and that's probably what it was about, right? But if you look at if you look at it from a philosophical view, it's actually, so philosophically or metaphorically, that light is God's wisdom, right? So now, what am I talking about? Let's just give you an orientation point. In Freemasonry, you had this thing of order out of chaos. Now, I don't think all Freemasonry is necessarily bad, just because I claim that they're part of the syndicate that destroyed, human civilization. But I think out of all the syndicate, the Freemasons are probably the least of the problem. The biggest problem was the hexagram mafia and the Jesuit order. And out of that, the Freemasons were kind of like the glue or the structure that was being used. And so in Freemasonry, you have this thing called order out of chaos, right? Order out of chaos. So this comes out of Genesis 1:3. This comes out of Genesis 1:3. So when you're reading Genesis 1:3 and it says, there's this great deep, the abyss, which is the oceans, and then out of this chaos of darkness and the seas are just kind of in chaos, right? There's like darkness and chaos and everything's and out of this, God says, "Let there be light." Okay, that was the word, which is the light. And so in Freemasonry, this is order out of chaos, because the word order, O-R, or means light. Or means light. Abraham is from the city of Ur, light. The people that came down from the mountains were called the Aryans. Ar means light. A month is called Ara. Ar-ah, light of the moon. So order, O-R, means light. So this comes from Genesis 1:3. So now, when you're reading John 1 through 5, and you're saying, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And it talks about a light, and that the darkness comprehended it not. Well, that's a recitation or a philosophical interpretation of Genesis 1:3. So when you're like, well, where's Jesus in the Old Testament? It starts with Genesis 1:3. God said, "Let there be light." That's it. That's where you find it first. So here's a Muslim, and he tells me Satan is light. 2 Corinthians 11:14. All right, let's read this and see what he thinks this means. What does he think that means? Okay, so first of all, Corinthians, that means it was written by Paul, which, whatever. 2 Corinthians. And no wonder for Satan himself. No wonder, for Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. Right? Satan masquerades as an angel of light. Yeah, Satan does. That's why you have, but that doesn't mean that. That doesn't negate the other thing. Right. So that doesn't negate the other thing, right? So right. So God's word in the Bible, Genesis, let there be light. So that's symbolic of God's wisdom, or the truth, or the word, which brings order. right? The truth brings order to the chaos. So yeah, but then you could pretend you're spreading the light, like you could have a rainbow flag and be like, I love everybody, take these shots, go to war, kill these people and those people. All right, like that's not really light, is it? That's not really light. But whatever. What else is he saying? We've got another one. Oh, I also argue with Christians. These Zionist Christian guys. They're so ridiculous. I was arguing with this one guy on Facebook because I found him on what's that guy like Jay Sekulow or these different the Christian Zionists. You get all these ads. You talk about Facebook. Facebook has all these policies about how you're not supposed to be violent, right? No violence, no calls for violence. Yet I keep seeing ads in my Facebook feed from the hexagram people as they're engaged in a full-blown genocide, mass murder, extermination campaign. Total violence. Like little kids are getting their heads blown off. Moms and dads are getting like their limbs blown off. The kids are all starving to death. Mass starvation, mass extermination, blood. Rivers of blood. And then but the people doing that, they're advertising to me about how on Facebook, on Facebook, I get to see their ads about fight, join the fight. No thanks, dude. I'm not part of your cult. I'm not part of your little aristocracy, your little cult. But so anyway, so there's a lot of Christians that have been duped into supporting that. And so one of the main ways that I've noticed that they trick them into that is they tell them that Jews are God's chosen people. That's like the big thing. And if you don't understand the Bible, at first that might make sense to you. Well, yeah, it's the Jews, right? The Jews are God's chosen people. But the Bible, but if you actually read the passages in the Bible, it never says that. It actually doesn't say that. I'll tell you what it says, but it doesn't say that. And so I was arguing with this guy. Oh, here we go. So I'm on this one lady, Carol. Anyway, she says, from the river to the sea, God's chosen people. And then she says, Jewish should be free. And then she's got a hexagram flag. And then I just simply state a fact, which is the Bible never calls Jews God's chosen people. It doesn't say that. And so this guy, who's a Christian Zionist guy, gets on. He's an expert in the Bible, right? He's from Alabama. He says, yes, the Bible refers to the Jewish people as God's people in several places. And he lists out the different places. And where Exodus and Deuteronomy and Deuteronomy again and all these places. And so when you go back and you read the passages, the word Jew isn't in there. In fact, so what I'm saying is in the Bible, I'll just make it clear for you. In the Bible, Abraham makes a pact with God and Israel. But Israel's not a Jew because Jacob isn't a Jew and Abraham's not a Jew because there weren't any Jews yet at that time. See, Abraham wasn't a Jew. I know this is like, people are, how do you mean Abraham wasn't a Jew? He was practicing Judaism. How is he practicing Judaism when there weren't any Jews yet? Jews didn't even exist yet. Okay? Jews did not exist until after Jacob, who became Israel, had 12 children. Boom, boom. 12. Why 12? Because there's 12 signs of the zodiac. That's why. It's actually 12 to 13. Right? So there were no Jews. Abraham wasn't a Jew, dummy. Jacob wasn't a Jew. How could he be Jewish? How could he be practicing Judaism when there were no Jews? His name was Israel, and Israel had 12 sons. Or was it 13? I know it was 12. And those 12 sons became the 12 tribes. And those 12 tribes became the tribes of the kingdom of Israel. Da, da, da. See, and out of all those 12, there was one called Judah. But God never made a pact with Judah. He made a pact with Israel in the Bible. So you're like, oh, those are just semantics. No, you're telling me that. See, the thing is, if you want to go on and you say that, because this is the Christian church in America that's run by the CIA and the Anti-Defamation League and the mafia, that whole network that's bankrolled by the Federal Reserve System internationally and is running RNC, and all the politicians, all of the entire U.S. Congress has to bend the knee and verbalize the words that Jews are God's chosen people. But what's this based on? It's not actually based on the Bible. It's not based on the written words of the Bible. Abraham was not Jewish. Jacob wasn't Jewish. There was no religion called Judaism until you had the nation called Judah under Hezekiah. But even then, they didn't call it Judaism. They had a territory called Judah. And under Hezekiah, actually, it wasn't just the tribe of Judah. There were a bunch of tribes living there. That's the other thing I have to explain to you, is that there were all these different tribes and races and people living in Judah since the beginning of time. And it wasn't just the tribe of Yahuwah, which was an actual tribe. There was a tribe listed in the Egyptian records called the Yahuwah tribe. That did exist, along with a bunch of other tribes, which I'm not going to list. But there was one called Yahuwah, and they were down near the Sinai, probably close to the southern part, down near the Sinai in the southern part of that area. But they were also so that territory became known as Judah because the Yahuwah tribe became the territory became named after them. But the people that lived in there weren't all Yahuwah tribe. There were a bunch of different races that lived in there, actually, including people that spoke an Indo-European language as far back as around, could be as far back around, actually, as far back around 1500 BC. 1500 BC. I'm not going to go into that history. That'll bore the hell out of you. Unless you have a question about it. If you have any questions, ask me about ancient history. Because I know what happened. Okay, let's go back to this Muslim guy. Okay, so I tell this guy, I tell this Christian Zionist guy, I go, no, the Bible doesn't use the term Jews when referring to God's chosen people. And I told him Abraham was not a Jew. Moses wasn't a Jew. Do you guys know that Moses wasn't Jewish? Does anybody know that? Moses was a Levite, right? Remember there's 12 tribes? Remember 12? Like 12, like the number of constellations in the zodiac? 12, like the number of monsters that Utnapishtim and Enkidu fight in the Epic of Gilgamesh? 12, because there's 12. So there's 12 of them. And then there was kind of 13 because the Levites became the tribe that carry around the golden ark. What's a golden ark? What does the golden ark symbolize? Does anybody know? Would you like to know where the golden ark is? Would you like to know where the golden ark is? Hit the thumbs up button if you'd like me to tell you I can tell. I'll tell you where it is. I'll just tell you where it is. You can go find it because I've seen it. I know exactly where it is, and if you want to know, I'll tell you. Anyway, so the Levites became the one that carried around the golden ark. Anyway, Moses, he was a Levite, which means he wasn't Jewish, and his religion wasn't called Judaism, and he wasn't even Jewish because he was a Levite. So what I'm telling you is the Christian Zionists and the way that they manipulated people into supporting this aristocracy, which we see very prominently in the RNC, is by telling them that these were all Jews or that this is all Judaism. So I told them Abraham was not a Jew. Moses wasn't a Jew because Moses was a Levite. There were no Jews at the time of Abraham. He was before all that. I told him you're lying about what the Bible says because this guy's like one of these these like people that read it all the time, but they don't know what it says. And they think it says something else that doesn't say that. So I said, never use the word Jews. None of the passages that he posted use the word Jew or Jews. I told him to read the Bible because he's illiterate. And he says, so you're the only idiot, this is what he says to me. You're the only idiot that refuses to believe who the Bible is addressed to. You're uniquely uninformed. Well, how? No, I know who it was addressed to. It was addressed to the Israelites. But the Israelites aren't necessarily Jews, not according to the Bible. I'm just guessing according to the Bible, like the written words in the book. According to that book, okay, according to the book itself, there is no covenant between God and Jews. Zero. There was never a covenant between God and Jews. There was a covenant between God and Abraham and the descendants of Abraham. And then one of his descendants was named Jacob. Jacob wasn't Jewish because there were no Jews then. What race were these people? They were Arameans. Okay, I'll get to that in a second. So Jacob wasn't Jewish, but he had 12 sons, and one of them was named Judah, and that just happens to relate to the month of July. Just happens to relate to the month of July. But what does Abraham mean? What does Abram mean? So my friend Jordan Maxwell had it wrong, I believe, when he said that Abraham had to do with the ram, blah, 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 blah. When you look in the dictionary on Google, like all the main dictionaries, this is what the Hebrews think it means, and they're wrong, I'm going to tell you. The Jewish rabbis and the Christian leaders and the scholars and all the people that write the dictionaries, what they say it means today, they say that Abram means the exalted father. That's what they say it means, but I don't think it means that. And I haven't confirmed this 100%, but I've confirmed it from my own mind probably 80%. And I'm going to tell you what I believe the word actually means. Ab, we know, means father. Aram. Abram. Now there's no what do you call it? There's no vowels in the written Hebrew, Aramaic, ancient languages. They didn't write vowels, so they just wrote consonants. So it'd be Abram. Now, the territory where Abraham is from is called Aram. Aram. Aram is the name of the territory. So if his name is Abram, it's possible that this means father of Aram, because his name's Abraham, father of Aram. Aram are the Arameans. Aram. Now, like I said, in the dictionary, it says the exalted father. I think they made up that word. I think they made up that definition because I've noticed that a lot of the words that people think are Hebrew are actually Egyptian and have Egyptian meanings that the rabbis don't know. Much of the language is actually lost even while they're using it. They have what's called an invented definition. They invented definitions for a lot of these words that don't mean, like Moses. They don't know what Moses means, right? Moses means born of. And I know that because the pharaohs all had the title born of Ra, born of Thoth, born of Ah, born of. It means born of in their God. And then, of course, Moses is born of with no God before his name because he rejected the gods of Egypt. See, there's a whole philosophy behind it that the rabbis don't even know. They don't even know because they don't know what these words mean. And I don't think they know what Abram means. So the dictionary definition is the exalted father. However, it appears to me that Abraham means father of many nations. What nations? The nations of Aram, because Abraham says, I was a wandering Aramean. I'm sorry. I believe it's in I believe it's in what passage is that? My father was a wandering Aramaean. My father was a wandering Aramaean. Where did I don't know what passage that is. I know that's a quote from, could be Deuteronomy or Numbers or Leviticus. I gotta look it up. Where did Isaac and Jacob go to get their wives? They went to Aram. They went to Padan Aram. So it's possible that Abe-ram actually means father of Aram, father of the Arameans. The father of the Arameans. That makes a lot more sense. And then Abraham means father of many nations. So he became the father not of just the Arameans, but the Arameans became many other nations. So that's and that follows what happened historically. Anyway, we're going to go back to this argument that I'm having with people on the internet. Had a very interesting argument with Muslims. Muslims, Jews, and Zionist Christians. We can do better. We can do better, human. You can do better than this. All right, let's see what. So the RNC is going to continue today. Oh, attacks on Biden. Oh yeah, so that was the whole thing last night with the Republicans. It was about how Joe Biden and the Democrats aren't doing enough for Israel. Joe Biden and the Democrats are anti-Semitic. Joe Biden and the Democrats aren't fighting Putin well enough. They should be fighting him more. Joe Biden and the Democrats should be fighting Hamas more. Joe Biden and the Democrats aren't fighting Iran enough. It's like, dude, shut up. Shut up. I'm watching Europe get destroyed. I'm watching the people in Ireland get invaded and conquered. I'm watching London turn into a foreign place. It's unrecognizable. And you want me to you want me to care about fighting with the Iranians and this is the thing. Okay, so after the Iraq, when the Iraq War happened, right? You had the 9/11 attack, which was an inside job, and it was blown up with bombs. So then they launched this big war, right? And they said, this is what they said. I remember they said, if you don't fight them over there, you're going to have to fight them here. And I thought, well, what if we just don't let them come here? This was the beginning of the alt-right. This is the beginning of the alt-right. This is the beginning of the schism that happened back then, dude. I'm telling you, it happened during the Bush years. Everything you've seen happen with the rise of Donald Trump, and before him, the attempt at a run for presidency by Ron Paul, and this whole movement of splitting the Republican Party up. It all started under Bush. It all started with people just like me who said, because they told us, they go, look, if you don't fight them over in Iraq, if you don't fight them over in Afghanistan, you're going to have to fight them here. That was a threat. That was them threatening us, right? That was saying, if you don't go along with what we're going to do, we're going to bring all those people to your neighborhood so they can kill you, right? That's who runs the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, for that matter, and all of Europe, and runs the European Union. So let me make this clear for you. They told us during the Iraq War, people didn't want to go fight. You had all these big marches all over Europe saying we don't want war with Iraq. We don't want war. We don't want to fight, the Syrians. So what they said, I remember them saying this clearly: if you don't fight them over there, you will fight them here. And so they brought them in because we were saying, well, why would we don't need to fight them here. We just need to secure the border. We don't let them come in here, and then we don't have to fight them here. We can live in peace here, and they can live in peace there, and everything's peaceful. But that's not what they wanted. You got to understand. That's not what. And so what became the thing? Anybody who was against the war was called a racist. was called an anti-Semite, right? So now you say, well, I'm against the war. I don't want to fight them over there. I don't want to fight them here or over there. And so the people that wanted the war said, you're a racist. Those are the same people bringing them in here, right? We could take Ireland. Ireland's on my mind right now, but it's Paris, it's Ireland, it's England, it's London, it's Scotland. I was arguing with people, 10, 15 years ago, the Scottish National Party. It's like people are joining it. I'm like, dude, you're not Scottish. I'm not Scottish. I have some, my grandma was Irish. I have an Irish side and my grandma's side, but I'm not Scottish. I don't look Scottish. I don't think I look Irish. I think I probably look more French, like on my father's side. But I'm just saying, I was arguing with the people. So just take what they're doing to Scotland and Ireland. It's like, okay, Scotland, you have to be, Scotland and Ireland and England. Well, you all have to be led and governed by people from Pakistan and somewhere in India or the Middle East. It's like, those are your new rulers now. See, this even during the Iraq War, which is 2006-ish. When was it? Sometime around. It wasn't this racially mixed. It was still racially mixed, but it wasn't overwhelming. See, and so they said, if you don't want to fight them over there, you're going to have to fight them over here. And we, the so-called alt-right, neo-Nazi, anti-Semitic, racist, KKK, blah, 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 said, we don't want to fight them. We want peace. Why not? How about just don't bring them here? And then we won't have to fight them here, and we won't have to fight them there, and we'll all just live in peace. How about we just do that? And they said, you're a Nazi, you're a racist, you're an anti-Semite, KKK, blah, 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 blah. That was the beginning of the alt-right movement. It was actually based on not wanting a war. And so then you have people, if you look at all the people on Twitter, all the people on social media that have been saying the whole time, we don't want a war with these other people. Those are the people that are called the Nazis. Those are the people called the racists. Those are the people called the anti-Semites. And it's true. The Nazi racist anti-Semites are anti-war. That's how it works. Because they don't want a war. Because why would they want a war? How about we just don't have a war and we live separately? Wouldn't that be a peaceful solution? Wouldn't that just be a peaceful solution? How about I don't want to kill you? I don't want to kill anybody. How about I live here with my people and I have my government, my religion, and I have my race, and we all live together happily here. And you live happily there. And we can be friends. And I want to go on vacation, let's say, and I want to visit all these ancient lands, So I take a vacation to Lebanon, or I take a vacation to Egypt, or I take a vacation to Iraq, and I see all your beautiful history, and I meet you, and I eat your food, and I enjoy your company, and then I go back home. And guess who's not there? You. You're not there. I'm at my home, and when I go back home, I'm back with my own people. We all live happily there. We all live happily. Things are easy. We got transportation. We've got we've got industry. We're all happy. You're happy over there. We're happy. There's nothing wrong. The thing that's causing the problems primarily, like why can't people just live in the people where they, like people that are, let's say, from the Middle East? Why can't they just live there and be happy? Why? Because they're getting bombed. Who's bombing them? The United States, which is controlled by this hexagram aristocracy, which controls the United States. It controls Australia. It controls Europe. It decimated Germany. See, before they bombed the Middle East, they bombed Germany, just killed all the Germans, took over Europe, and took over England. And so those are the ones now bombing the Middle East. So now those people can't live there. Where do they have to go? And then the people that are doing the bombing, they go, come up here, we'll help you. Oh, I know you're getting bombed. Well, why don't you just come up here and live in Paris, Berlin, London, Ireland, come to America, live in Michigan and Minnesota, and then you'll vote for us and keep us in power. That's how it works. You'll vote for us and keep us in power, and you'll replace these people that don't like us. because the people that live here think we're terrible and they're a bunch of racists. So you and I will join forces together and defeat them. Oh, you know what? This is all written down in, I believe, the 1920s or 30s. It's called the Kalergi Plan. The Kalergi Plan. The Kalergi Plan. Nicholas Coudenhoven Kalergi, who was an Austrian aristocrat and a Freemason. And he was half Japanese and half Austrian. And he was a member of the Habsburg government that Hitler didn't like. And so when Hitler came to power, he had to flee. And where did he go? He went to New York, and he was sponsored by the Rothschilds and some other Masons. And I've read all their Masonic documents, so I'm not just making this up. I can give you a copy if you want to read it. I can give you a copy if you want to read it. Yeah, it was published by the Romanian Lodge. The Romanian Masonic Lodge published the documents about the establishment of the European Union, which they called the United States of Europe Freemason Project, and how Kalergi was involved in that. And Kalergi wrote a book about how they were going to be how they were going to maintain power and create a new system of government, right? Because you got to understand, the whole project since the Reformation, since the Protestant Revolution, the Protestant Reformation, the whole agenda, because what was the Protestant Reformation? The kings of Europe wanted independence from the Pope. The kings did. And so the Pope said, you want independence from me? Okay, you're mutinous. How about I just get rid of all of you? That was the plan. And what is Marxism? Karl Marx is a anti-monarchist. What is a central bank? A central bank doesn't need a king, right? The bankers that were loaning money to the kings, they didn't like the kings, because the kings, what if the kings didn't want to pay them back? What if you're a banker and you're a hexagram banker and you're living in Venice and you loan money to, or you're living in Spain and you loan money to the government, you loan money to the monarchs in Spain or in Italy or Germany or France. And let's say they're having trouble paying you back. What are you going to do? What are you going to do about it? What can you do? I guess they can just take your money if they want, right? They can impose all kinds of regulations on you with your money that you loaned them. They don't like that. They don't want that. How about you have an ally right there? So you've got the Pope. He wants to get rid of the kings because they're mutinous. You've got the bankers. They want to get rid of the kings because they'll have a whole new banking system that they control without the kings getting in their way and ordering them around. What is this whole push towards? We have to overthrow Putin. We have to overthrow Saddam Hussein. We have to overthrow Gaddafi. We have to overthrow Assad. We have to overthrow this guy and that guy and that guy and this guy. Why? Because they're authoritarian. What does that mean? That means they don't have to answer to anybody, which means they don't have to answer to you, right? So you don't like this fact that there's this guy that runs this other country and he controls the territory and he doesn't have to answer to you. So he has to be overthrown because he doesn't answer to you. Right. And so who were the kings of Europe? The kings of Europe didn't have to answer to the Pope. The Pope didn't like that anymore. And so the Pope started this thing called the Jesuit order, which had total allegiance to the Pope, not to the kings. So it was operating internationally. And what were they involved in? Slavery. They had slave plantations all over the Dominican Republic and Brazil and Louisiana and all the tropical regions where they could grow sugar cane. Of course, that was the main thing. The cotton thing was, I guess, a big deal too in the South in the United States. But it was cotton, but it was mainly the sugar business. The sugar business was was like the thing. I mean, and sugar is a huge business, right? Sugar is in everything you eat, but sugar was the thing. So that's where the slave trade came in. And so that monopoly between the hexagram financiers and the Jesuits, who didn't have any allegiance to the kings. So now you had this whole commercial enterprise coming about through this new order of the hexagram financial groups and the Jesuit order, and the kings were all cut out of the deal. And so this started a war between the kings and the Jesuits, which the kings, who won? Who won? The kings or the Jesuits? You tell me who won. Are there any kings left? Are the Jesuits still here? You know, type in Ignatius Society on a Google Maps search and see how many are in your town. See how many are across America, across the world. Pope Francis is a Jesuit. So who won? Does Pope Francis support monarchies? No. Does Pope Francis work with all the big banking institutions and the big pharmaceutical companies that are run by B'nai B'rith and the Anti-Defamation League? Yes. And the World Jewish Congress? Yes. Ron Lauder of the World Jewish Congress of B'nai B'rith, the Anti-Defamation League, John Greenblatt, Ron Lauder. Now, sadly, those people run Donald Trump. Donald Trump's like best friends with Ron Lauder, the head of the World Jewish Congress, because Donald Trump's just he just cares about people. He doesn't hate anybody, but you know, I don't know. I'm still gonna, you know, I like Donald Trump, but he's only he has good instincts, and so his general ideas about how to do things are good and are way better than what we have now. So it'd be like a huge improvement. But it doesn't solve our problem. Our problem that started with the Protestant Reformation. That's where the problem started. Protestant Reformation, the formation of the Jesuit order and the Illuminati, and the hexagram mafia and the slave system they set up. Because let me give an example. Let's take this whole thing about individualism versus collectivism. The people who came to America and started the colonies weren't individualists. They were not individualists. They were collectivists, but not Marxists. They were just normal. They're like, it's just normal to join up, be part of a group, and everyone works together without some kind of nobody has to it's not like you've got a bunch of bureaucrats dictating stuff to you. No, you're living out in a colony, and these are all your blood brothers and sisters and cousins and race. And so you all work together to build stuff and make stuff and trade stuff and defend yourself against the other races, like the Indians who were here, who I like, actually. I use the word Indian because I grew up using that, but I like Native American people. I think they're cool. I like their culture. I think it's cool. But guess what? It's theirs. It's not mine. It's just different. I'm not an Indian. I know a lot of white people like to claim they're Indians now. I don't. I don't like to go around claiming that I'm like a Cherokee or something. And if you have some Cherokee, that's good for you. I don't have any. Like, there's literally I have no Indian blood. I like Indians, though. I like them. I think they're cool. And I mean Native American Indians. I like other Indians. I like all Indians. I'm just saying, the people who came to America were from Europe. They were from England. They were from Italy. They were from France. They were from the Netherlands. They were those are the most. It was the Scots and the English and the Welsh and the Dutch and the French and the Italians and the Spanish and the Portuguese. Those are the people that came here. And when they came here as racial groups, and they collectively worked together as a group to survive, because that's normal. That's what normal people do. It's not normal to everyone's an individual, and we don't see our group. That's not normal. And so Kalergi, when he wrote his book Practical Idealism, I don't have the quote in front of me, so I'm going to paraphrase, but he said that the future man was going to be mixed race, and it was just going to be a world of individuals, not nations. And so this is how this new aristocracy was going to stay in power. Because let me tell you the problem they had with Europe and why they had to do this to Europe. Let's take Europe. You've got all these Germanic tribes that have been living there for like thousands of years, right? The Celtic tribes and the Germanic tribes, and they've got like roots to the land that go back thousands of years. So how do you get this new government that forms and unites everybody? Well, their plan was to literally racially destroy them by bringing in a lot of different races and mixing everybody up racially so that nobody would have ties to their original race. And no one, therefore, they would really have no ties to one another or the land. They would just be a bunch of individuals. So by making everyone into just individuals, this new aristocracy of the hexagram people would become the ruling class, and they would work collectively while everybody else were just individuals. And so this is the plan. This is why they outlawed free association, which is part of the First Amendment of the Constitution. It has to do with free speech. So not only speech, but association. There is no more free association. You can't freely associate in America. It's illegal to be what they call racist unless you're a hexagram person, in which case that's not only is it legal, but literally you have a license to kill. You have a license to kill everybody else. So that's just the way it's set up. My computer's acting funny all of a sudden. Buffering. So that's written. That's literally written in the Kalergi book, Practical Idealism, is to make the world into a world of individuals, so that you would have no ties to your government. So like you have no. So rather than having a Germanic people that have allegiance to their race and their own government, and French people and British people and different races, the Greeks. So now it's going to be just a bunch of individuals, and they're all racially mixed. And so now you can have this new government that rules over everybody, that has no ties to any of it, and only cares about one thing, which is money, which is resources, which is controlling the resources, controlling the population in a new slave system. So when I'm watching the RNC, what I'm watching this slave cult, the cult of slavery. I'm watching the cult of slavery, which has totally taken over the U.S. political establishments of both parties. And it is now expanded across all of Europe and into China, because China is basically a slave system too. But they still have maintained their racial hegemony, which is going to be a problem, because while they broke down all the racial hegemony in North America and Europe, they didn't do that to the Chinese, so the Chinese can unite around race and repel them. That's probably that is what is happening. But when I'm watching the Republican Party, other than Donald Trump, who I like, and there's some other nice people there, and it was nice. I give it a 5 out of 10. I halfway enjoyed it, but I can see the overarching agenda of the establishment of the Republican Party, the Mike Johnsons and the Mitch McConnell's, like his wife, Chow or whatever her name, and they're Taiwanese. They have a shipping business that's run out of China and Taiwan, right? Like they're they're literally international shipping company. That's Mitch McConnell and his Chinese wife. What I'm saying is, so that's why they did this, is so they could set up a new slave system. So everyone who's an individual becomes a slave of this new aristocracy of the hexagram, and they're the ruling race. They're the ruling race, and that's exactly what I watched last night. That's what I've watched over the last 3 days of the Republican National Convention. Is the flexing of the muscles of the hexagram rulers over its slaves. And it's sad to see these people who are basically like my cousins and blood relatives in America, the white race out there cheering for the hexagram cult and cheering for the dissolution, cheering on this idea that their race doesn't matter. See, it's one thing, your race doesn't matter, but all these other races, see, they matter. That's what I keep saying. I'm not against other races. I like other races. I've always liked them. It's like Donald Trump. People say Donald Trump's a white supremacist, yet he likes black people. Like he really likes them. Like he really likes them, right? You don't understand. I think Donald Trump is a white supremacist, and he really likes he really likes black people a lot. Like he has a soft spot for them. He cares about them, right? And and it's like I was watching the Alex Jones show, and he explained it pretty well. Is that he Donald Trump likes to fight with these other businessmen who are mostly like white people and Jews and stuff. But when it comes to blacks, he actually likes them. He wants to help them. He pays off their mortgages and stuff. Like he's a good person. Anyway, but the RNC, the overall message of the RNC to me, watching it, is this is the same communist, Marxist, Jesuit, hexagram syndicate of slavery that enslaved not just the black races, but mankind. Like they're like, we're not racist. We want to enslave everybody. You see, that's what it boils down to. You have to understand their mindset. They're not racist. They want to slave everybody. They're not racist. They want to kill everybody. They're not racist. They want to give dangerous drugs to everybody. We're not racist. They want to abort everybody's kids. They're not racist. They want to sell babies to all kinds of races of babies to homosexual parents. That's not racist. Those things aren't racist. Those things aren't bigoted because they're doing it to everybody. They want to do it to everybody. So it's not racist. Get it? It's not. It's really not. Bill Gates wants to spread his amazing and totally workable solutions to the whole world, not just blacks, but to whites and to Asians, to everybody, because he's not racist. Everybody should take that stuff. Everybody needs to inject themselves with stuff that they got from the United Nations. Everybody. It's for everyone. So anyway, let's go back to my arguing with Muslims and other people and Christian Zionists. What else do we got? What else do we got? Yeah. So anyway, here we've got this guy. No. I told this guy the other day, because I'm arguing with these Muslims. I'm going to tell you right now, okay? I'm going to give you the secret to understanding. The Bible was written with a secret code, which is not a secret to me, and it's not really that secret. It's not like, oh, the Bible code, we found this code within the words, and it's got all these other words, and they go with diagonals, and that's all bull. That's all bull. But there is a code that was used to write the Bible, and that code is a solar theme. And that solar theme begins in Genesis, actually. Most people don't know this. Nobody knows this. I'm the person that discovered this, I guess. No, actually, my friend Jordan Maxwell taught me about this. But he didn't actually see all of it because I found some stuff in there that he didn't know about. So in Genesis, one of the perfect examples is Noah's Ark. I'm going to tell you what Noah's Ark is about. You're not going to believe me at first until you actually go back and read it. Okay, so it's okay if you think it's okay if you think I don't know what I'm talking about, but I actually do, and it's pretty obvious once you do actually know. It becomes really obvious. So now the reason I like to tell people this stuff is because it totally discredits all the people who claim I'm God's chosen person, and it discredits all the Christian Zionists and all the false versions of Christianity, and all the false versions of Judaism and rabbinical Judaism and all this other false versions, and it totally discredits Islam completely, and it reveals the actual writing and what the story is about. So when you look at it, it'll be obvious to you, like it'll be as plain as day. So the thing about Noah's Ark is when they read Noah's Ark, they see a story about a boat and a flood, and they think that it's about a boat and a flood. They think it's about a flood of water, and it's actually not. And you're like, what do you mean it's not? It says right there it's about a flood. Yes, I know, because the original story was about a flood. But when they rewrote the story, they wrote it with a code because it's called an allegory. So there's like a story in the story, which it's not like it's hard to see once you know what it is. I'm going to tell you what it is. So it's really simple. In the story of Noah's Ark, if you notice, it follows the calendar year. This is the most important thing you have to understand, because when people read the story of Noah's Ark, it says on the 17th day of the second month, this happens, and people go, well, I don't need to know that. What difference does that make? And then they go on to read the story about there's a flood and all the people die and the animals get on the ship and everyone dies and the ship lands and then the floodwaters cease. But what they miss is what the part that they miss that actually explains what the story is about. What actually explains what the story is about isn't the animals and isn't the water. Well, the water's part of it. The water does kind of explain what it's about. But so it says it on the 17th day of the second month, this happens. And then 40 days later, this happens. And then 150 days later, this happens. And then this many days later, this thing happens. And then another 40 days later, or whatever, this thing happens. And then they get out of the ark. So what is that called? That's called the calendar. It's called the calendar, and all the things that are being expressed in the story during the flood are happening according to days on the calendar, and they just happen to correspond to what the sun is doing on the calendar and how much light there is in the day, right? Because it's not a story about a flood of water. See, the original story was about a flood of water, but when the Israelites wrote the story of Noah's Ark, they used a solar theme because everything they write is based on a solar theme, right? So that's how you know who the Israelites are and who they're not. That's why when you read the Talmud, is the Talmud based on a solar theme? No. It's a bunch of rabbis trying to interpret Genesis and the other books of the Bible, which they're confused about, right? So all the chosen people, all of Judaism is based on a bunch of rabbis that are confused about the Bible and don't know that Noah's Ark is the sun going through the calendar. But it's obvious if you read it. I mean, it's plain as day. It's plain as day if you're literate and you can read. So I'll just give you a quick summary. So what happens is, see, the boat, the quote unquote boat that saves Noah and his family, it rises up. It's the quote unquote flood starts in the second month, which is the second month, which is what it was called. That would be April. Okay, Mark. Okay, the first month is called Nisan, and the second month is called, can't remember what it's called, but the second month is April in our calendar, right? Which is also whatever. Oh, that's oh yeah. The second month is Taurus. So anyway, so in the second month, the rain starts, and it rains for 40 days. It takes so people think the flood lasted 40 days and 40 nights. No. 40 days and 40 nights is how long it took for the boat to rise up off the ground and begin to move from spring, 40 days, into what? Summer, right? So for 40 days. So the boat's so in the second month, which is April, the boat takes 40 days and 40 nights before it rises up off the ground and begins to move. Okay. And then the flood continues. It's still flooding, right? And this goes on and on for 150 days. What's 150 days later? Well, the 7th month is when the flood stops and the rain stops. So it starts in spring, and then it rises up on the ground, and it takes 40 days for it to reach up off the ground. And then it continues on until the 7th month, which is September, which is the autumn equinox, which is when it stops. And that's when the flood stops. So the flood starts in spring and continues through summer, and then it stops in autumn in September. And that's when the flood stops. And that's when the ark rests on the top of Mount Ararat. And then guess what happens? Then all the water recedes, the quote unquote water. What's receding? What's receding between September and January? The light, right? The light is receding. The light is receding. So the light recedes from autumn into December, right? 7, 8, 9, 10. So from autumn, from the 7th month into the 10th month, the water begins to recede, and you see the land starts to appear. And then you get another couple months there. You got January, February, and the land, the water completely goes away. What else goes away? The light. Until the following. So in the old calendar, it starts in March. The old calendar starts in spring. So it's spring equinox, and then you get into the 2nd month is when the rain starts and the flood. So that's a flood of. See, so what kills the people? See, you talk to atheists. Why would God kill a bunch of people with a flood? What a horrible God. Okay, well, in the original story, which is about the Anunnaki, that was about the gods killing man with a flood because they didn't like men. They thought men were annoying. But when the Israelites rewrote the story, they gave it a solar theme because they came out of Egypt, right? They came out of Egypt. And in Egypt, they had a solar deity whose name I'm not going to tell you yet. You have a few of them, but they had a solar deity named Atum. Atum, the self-created God, the first God of the genealogy of the gods. Adam, the god Adam. Boy, oh boy. You think the rabbis know any of this? They don't know anything. How are they the chosen people? They don't even know what their book's about. How are they the chosen people if they don't even know any of this stuff? So anyway, so Atum was the self-created god of Egypt, who basically was the sun. So he's like a sun god. Now, the sun god in Egypt, like the sun was called Atum Ra, and the sun was called Aten later, right? The Aten. But originally it was Atum. The god Atum. He was the god who was self-created. So he was the first god, self-created god that created all the other gods. So in Egyptian religion, there is a genealogy of the gods. There's a genealogy of the gods, and so there's a genealogy of the gods, and so this genealogy of the gods starts with a god named Atum. And so when the Israelites wrote their genealogy, the first man, because they didn't worship other gods, right? They didn't worship the gods of Egypt. The first man was called Atum. So in Egyptian religion, the first god was called Atum. And in the Israelite religion, the first man was called Atum because they didn't worship other gods. What they did was they took the genealogy of the gods of Egypt and they turned it into the genealogy of their own race. And then they mixed some of their ideology of the solar theme with their old ancient books from Chaldea and Babylon, which had to do with a flood, which had to do with the food of immortality, which is the story of the myth of Adapa, where he goes among the gods, the Anunnaki, and he gets tricked by his creator into not eating the food that would have made him immortal. He was offered the food of immortality by the gods, the Anunnaki. They offered him the food of immortality, but his creator Enki told him not to eat it because it would poison him. You see, so Enki tells his creation, the man Adapa, he says, don't eat the food they're going to offer you when you go meet them because they're going to kill you. And so they offer him the food. He goes, no, I'm good. I don't want any of that. And they don't offer it to him again. He had one chance to accept immortality, and he said no. And so his own creator tricked him into not being immortal. Now, so that's a story about how man is formed, right? We have the mind of God, but we're not. Our bodies don't live forever, right? So we know, for instance, the thing about the Enki's creation, Adapa, he knew he was going to die, right? What happened in the story is, I'll give you more information. The story of the myth of Adapa. Adapa is created by Enki as a man, and he goes out and he's like a fisherman or something, and he's like out on the sea, and the winds come and blow his boat, and he crashes on the rocks, and he almost dies. And so he finds out what's causing the wind. It's like these big flapping wings or something, and he goes and breaks them all up. And so the gods want to know what happened. Why were these things broken that make the wind? So he goes to the gods, and then Enki tells him, hey, when you go up there, don't take the food that they're going to give you because it'll kill you. And so he goes up there, and they offer him the food of immortality. He says, no, thanks, I'm good. She was tricked. So then he had to die as a man. That was the story. Anyway, when the Israelites came out of Egypt with their solar theme, they changed all these ancient books of the Babylonian, Chaldean races, which they were originally part of. See, they came out of there. They were the Aramaean, Amorite races that came down into Egypt around 2000 BC. And so when they came out of Egypt, they came out of it with their own new religion, which had a solar theme. So they always describe God in God's word or the truth in terms of the light, the sun. See, the sun is a light. An atom was called the sun. So the first man was called Atom because they don't worship Egyptian gods. See, Moses. See, the pharaohs had titles. Amosis, born of born of the moon. Thothmosis, born of Thoth. Ramosis, born of Ra. Moses just means born of no God, no Egyptian God. So when the Israelites came out of Egypt, they used this solar theme to rewrite these old pagan books and give it a new God, the new God of the Israelites, which is a God which was related to God's word, not a so let me give you an example. So in the story of Noah's Ark, God's word comes to Noah, right? And he's told to build a boat, and that boat saves him from the flood that's going to kill all the other people. And of course, this is all done. See, because there was an old story about a flood, but so now in the new story, that flood has to do with God's word, and God's word has to do with the light. So it follows the calendar. So it starts in April and it floods through September, and then it stops and the water recedes. And that water, which is the light, which is actually an allegory for the light of God, kills the wicked people. So the wicked people die because of the light, because of God's light. God's light in the story of Noah's Ark is the water. God's light is the water that kills them. So God's light, the truth, is what kills the wicked people. You see? Or it saves Noah and his family because they're just and they're righteous and they're good. It kills the wicked. Now, so this idea of the boat being the sun is actually also part of Egyptian mythology or philosophy or mythology. Because what happens is in Egypt, Ra, which is the sun god, also another name for the sun god, travels across the sky in a boat. right? So Ra travels across the sky in a boat. So in the old creation theory, they thought that the sky was actually an ocean. So just like when you go down to the beach and you look into the ocean, you see this vast ocean, and it's the same color as the sky. It's blue or it's dark, depending on the light. Well, they look in the sky and they go, well, that must be a vast ocean like this one. So that's what they thought it was. And so the theory of the sky was that it was an ocean. And the theory of the sun, they didn't really think it was a boat, but they would tell stories about it as if it were a boat, or maybe it's like a boat, or so the boat would travel across the sky. So they incorporated that into the old Babylonian story of Ziusudra and the flood, and made it about this new religion, which is God's word is salvation, right? So Noah's Ark is the sun, and the light is the water is the light of God flooding the earth and killing the wicked through the calendar year, which starts in spring and ends in autumn. Now, on the old Babylonian religion, the holiday would start in the Akatu festivals would start in spring, around the time of the spring equinox, which is Passover. Passover is spring equinox plus full moon, okay? And the Orthodox Church and the rabbinical Judah groups do it differently because, for instance, this last year, Passover for the Orthodox Church was during March, so it was like the new moon started right before the equinox and ended after the equinox. So through that, the full moon was like right after the equinox was a full moon, like right in March. Whereas the Jews waited until there was another new moon following the equinox, and then that full moon was their Passover. So they calculated it a little differently, depending on who's doing the calculations. But the important thing is, so in the old Babylonian, Akkadian religion, the Akatu festival, you had the beginning of the year, which is in March, between March and April, with the spring equinox, and that was the beginning of a certain type of season, which then ended in September, which is when they would have the second festival, I believe. Yeah. So, I think the way that they did it is they would start planting their seed. They would start preparing their fields in September and sowing their seeds, and then the rains would come through the winter and bring and the crops would grow through the winter time, the cool rainy season, and then by the time of the spring equinox they would have their ripened fruit, which then they would start to harvest between spring and summer, the Feast of Weeks. So this is all based on an ancient Akkadian Babylonian calendar. Not the Babylonians that captured that took the Jews hostage in that was the Neo-Babylonians. I'm talking about ancient Babylonians, which is between 2000 BC and 1550 BC, not the Neo-Babylonians, which was like, I don't know, 500 BC, 600 BC, something, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, so the story of Noah's Ark follows the same calendar as the Akatu festival and the Feast of Weeks and the Passover and the Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Hashanah, or Ha-Ethanim, which is the Phoenician way of saying it, starts in September. That's when they start preparing their fields, and that's when they would have that festival, right? Because that's when the rains are going to start coming, and then the stuff's going to grow through the winter, and then they're going to ripen, and that's why they had the Akatu festival in spring, and they would start harvesting their food and eating their food. They'd have all these feasts for weeks that go on for weeks as all these crops start to harvest. The fruit ripens, and they start picking it, and they start eating it, and it goes on for several weeks through the beginning of summer. And that was the whole cycle. And so that's the cycle of the calendar. That's the cycle of the sun. The sun is called Shem. The sun is called Shem. Atom in Egypt is the sun. The genealogy of Adam, Noah's Ark, his son Shem, the line of Shem. Shem is the sun. Shemish means sun man. Samson means Shemish. Story of Samson. He's got the long hair and he cuts it off. He loses his power, but then it grows back. Right? It's not the perfect story, but that's what that's the theme of the story. The theme of the story in Samson is that he's the sun man. The sun man is Shemish, Shem. Like we got this thing called anti-Semitism, right? Anti-Semitism. You're an anti-Semite. I'm against the sun. Do you even know what you're saying? You don't even know what these words mean. You don't even know what these words mean. You don't know anything. You don't know anything. You're illiterate. You're illiterate. You don't know what you're talking about. So you formed your little aristocracy of lies. You've got an aristocracy of lies. That's what it is. That's what it is. You don't know what these words mean. You don't know what you're talking about. Shem is the sun. Adam is the sun. Noah's Ark is the sun going through the calendar. And it's the light that kills the wicked because it's the truth. And the wicked hate the truth. But you didn't know that, Rabbi. You didn't know any of that. How are you God's chosen people when you don't know what your own stories say or what they mean? Because they weren't written for you. That's why. Because you are a what do you call it? You're a fraud. You're a charlatan. You are a pretender. You're a faker. You're not the real deal. You're not the real deal. So back to Abraham, the father of many nations. What nation? Before he was the father of many nations, guess what? His name, I don't believe. I haven't really confirmed this 100%. I don't believe his name means exalted father. I think it means father of Aram. Abraham, Rahim, father of many nations, father of, because him, when you put the H-I-M on the end, that's plural, that pluralizes it. So Abraham means the Abiram, father of Aram. Aram is where they came from. It's Aram. Padan Aram, the Arameans. Boom. I just undermined all your religions. The Muslims don't know any of that. They invented a whole new religion. None of the Jews know anything that I just told you. And the Christians don't know it either. But it's all right there in the Bible. And that's the purest, cleanest form interpretation you will ever hear. And it strips away all of the lies, all the liars, and all their fake religion and all their fake ideology. And basically, a lot of them are well-meaning people, but they don't understand their own books, and so they've caused a lot of problems because here we are on the brink of look at our societies caused by this misunderstanding. We've got Dave Rubin trafficking baby kink. Dave Rubin is a baby kink person. He likes baby kink. He likes to pretend like he's a father to babies that he buys. He buys a baby and then he pretends like it's his dad. Like, what about you ever think of the baby? Maybe the baby doesn't want to be with you because you're not its mother. Okay, this is horrifying. Like, I can't even think of anything more evil and horrifying than this. This is like pure evil. Who would do that to a baby? Who would have a whole government organized around child abuse? We do in America. And it's all organized by this group who think that they're God's chosen people. And a whole system, a whole syndicate of mafia with the Jesuits and the Pope, and the B'nai B'rith Anti-Defamation League. You go on the Anti-Defamation League website, and they have books that they want you to read to 0 to 3-year-olds about having gay dads. Your dads are gay. You're a baby. You're an infant. You can't defend yourself. You can't leave. You're trapped. You're a slave. You're a slave to kink, and you're a baby. That makes me mad. That makes me mad. Oh, and I've also noticed that all over America, and it's pretty much every state, you have what's called chest feeding, where men find a way, with the facilitation of actual people that are trained by government sponsored, and including St. Joseph's Hospital in Orange County, hospitals, and to be able to feed a baby with a male breast. Okay. Feeding. Okay. This is total dystopian stuff. But what did we hear about? Did we hear about any of this at the RNC? No. We're supposed to be mad at Iran when we have chest feeding going on in America. Chest feeding, right? If you wanted to really be upset about something, don't make it Iran when you've got chest feeding going on in your neighborhood. And the authorities are helpless to do. Can you imagine this? You've got organized chest feeding where perverts take a little helpless little baby and do the undescribable with it. And the police departments are helpless to do. Like, you call the police and there's nothing they can do. And not only is there nothing they can do, but you're the problem, bigot, because you've been reading the Bible or something. Like, that's the situation we're in. That's the situation. Chest feeding is going on. The cops can't stop it. And it's done out in the open. Like, people will publish it on their websites that they offer that as a service, that they can help you do that. If you're some pervert guy that has some weird kink and you're looking for, a helpless baby to abuse, and you call, there's no police organization to call. That's why I'm saying the RNC is worthless. There's no one to call. There's no police organization in any Republican-controlled territory, or Democrat, but we're talking about the RNC, that's going to stop men from chest feeding helpless babies. This is not something to be proud of. So this is not that makes you not the greatest country in the world, right? That makes your war record worthless. If you fought some other enemy, but then you come home and there's guys chest feeding babies, and you call the cops and they say, "Sorry, bro, what are you, some kind of bigot? What are you calling us for?" That means you're a horrible country. You're a horrible country. You're a horrible country that doesn't deserve to exist. You're a horrible country that doesn't deserve to exist. If you allow men to sexually abuse, and men and women to sexually abuse children. Can't do it, bro. Can't do it. Can't be part of that. Yeah. So anyway, so what am I suggesting we do? What I'm suggesting we do is, the only thing we can do is form a new government. That's the only thing you do. There's no other solution. You can't, like, for instance, you go, "Brian, that sounds terrible. Maybe we should go out and just start punching people that are doing that and attacking them violently." No, you know why? Because you can't punch enough people to make a difference, and you'll get arrested and go to jail. So don't do that. What you can do is form a new government. And if you're going to form a new government, you're going to have a philosophy. You're going to have an ideology. And you're going to have bonds of blood. You're going to have bonds of blood and bonds of ideology. So blood is good, but blood alone isn't a strong enough bond. It has to be blood and ideology. Those are the only bonds that are going to last. Blood and ideology. That's how you form a government. You have to be bonded by your blood in your veins. It has to be the same blood as the people around you. And you have to have the same ideology. Because even if you're bonded by blood but not by ideology, it doesn't work. Nope. Because if you have a different ideology, then you can't agree on things. And so you have to find the ultimate ideology to agree on. And so what I suggest is that the only thing that anyone should ever be compelled to believe is the truth. And you could say, well, how do you know what the truth is? And I'd say, well, what you need to say is the truth. What you do is you just take the truth itself, whatever the truth is, just the truth. And you tell everybody, we worship the truth as the ultimate thing. There is nothing greater than the truth. There is no ideology higher than the truth. The truth is the alpha omega. The truth is the most important thing. And that's the only thing that anyone could ever be compelled to believe. Now, not everybody necessarily agrees on what the truth is. And so you have to have dialogue. You have to have dialogue about the facts. And then people need to come to their own conclusions. But you have to have open, clear, unobfuscated dialogue about the facts. That's the only way for a group of people to come to any concessions about what is true. That's the only way. It can only happen through open debate and unfettered dialogue. It means you cannot restrict the speech. The speech has to be unfettered, completely unfettered. That is the only way you can ever have a society that leans towards the truth. Because as long as the speech is always unfettered, and as long as the dialogue continues and is open, people can continue to reanalyze the ideas freely without any consequence of death, pain, imprisonment, assassination by the Anti-Defamation League, B'nai B'rith, the Jesuit lawyers that work with them in the justice departments, in the government agencies, the FBI. Like, you have to be able to discuss these things openly without any restrictions, so that you can come, so that people can come to some conclusions which are rooted in truth. And as the argument develops, maybe you'll have lies introduced. But because the communication's unfettered, people can then analyze the data and then make up new arguments against it. See, and it just evolves. You have this evolving arguments, evolving data, which is inclined towards the truth. It keeps inclining towards the truth. So you put the truth as the ultimate thing, the North Star, the Alpha Omega, the Logos, Christ. That's what Christ means, is the King, the anointed King. Now, I'm not talking about Christ as a physical thing. I'm talking about that it's an allegory. I'll get too complicated to you. I'm just saying, if you put it as the truth itself, well, whatever the truth is, we don't know. We say we don't know, but we know that there is a truth that we all want to work towards as a society. So that we have to have unfettered, unrestricted communication. And then we all try to, we hash these things out publicly through social media or through forums or through committees or through conferences, and people can bring their arguments and hash these things out. This is how the Greeks developed real democracy, not what we have, not what they call democracy in our system, but a real system based on the Logos. They called it the Logos. They wanted open debate and dialogue, and open debate and dialogue inclines towards the truth, and the bad ideas are discarded, and the good ideas are accepted. Because the truer your society is, the more it's inclined to survive, right? The more lies and deceptions and disinformation that you have that's permeating the media through CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, NPR, Public Radio, Radio Free America, the European Union, BBC, Sky News, which is all run by the CIA and the MI6 and the FBI and Mossad and B'nai B'rith and the Catholic Jesuit Pope. See, the more you have that suppressing all the information And the pharmaceutical companies, which bankroll all the social media and prevent you from talking about things, or your videos are deleted and your accounts are deleted. See, the more you can't incline towards truth, which means your society can't incline towards survival, right? Because people that don't like discussion want most likely to hurt you. They want to hurt you, right? They don't want you to talk. They want you to shut the fuck up. Hey, just shut the fuck up, okay? Just shut the fuck up and do what I say. That's the message that we get. That's the message that we're getting. The message that we're getting is shut the fuck up and do what I say, or I'm going to hurt you. Wow, this is a democracy. This is what you call democracy. Interesting. I like that. I like how bold you are. Very interesting. I'm not really enjoying it, but I mean, it's interesting. So yeah, so we need a society that inclines towards truth through logos. Actually, logos means reason, and reason must be rooted in truth. And the only way to really get to that truth is through discussion, debate, open, unrestricted discussion and debate. No topics off limits. No insult off limits. Right? This idea that we've got a cult at the RNC saying that they're going to come after you for anti-Semitism. We've got DeSantis and all these different people and governments all over America cracking down on the anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism means you don't like something and that you speak out against it. Well, that should be part of the art. That should be part of the process of argument and discussion, which leads towards truth, right? Are we trying to find the truth? I just told you the definition of Shem is the sun, and the sun is a light, and the light is a metaphor for the truth. So if you know, but the people that are claiming, this goes back oddly enough to this Muslim guy that said, you know, about Satan being masquerading as a light. He's misinterpreting the Bible. But yeah, Satan masquerades as the light. Oh, you're against Semitism. You're an anti-Semite. I'm the Shem. I'm the light. I'm the light. I'm the light. The Jewish people are the light. We're the Shem. We're the light. We're the light of God. Really? No, you're not. The light of God is the truth, right? So when they say anti-Semitism, they say you're against us. We're the light. That's what they're saying. That's the code. I don't even know if they know that they're saying it, but I know they're saying it because I know what the words mean. I know what the words actually mean, right? So the darkness is not the light, right? Despotism, the whole agenda that you see of cracking down on people's speech, throwing people in prison for what they say. You look at the story of John the Baptist, who had his head cut off for criticizing the Pharisees and the Edomite king of Judah at the time, which was, what's his face? Herod. Like, they cut his head off, right? That was part of the story. He was an anti-Semite, you see? He was an anti-Semite, so they had to cut his head off. And Jesus was an anti-Semite, so they had to hang him on a cross because he was an anti-Semite, right? That's what they call anti-Semitism. That's why anti-Semitism started 2,000 years ago with Jesus Christ. That's when it started. It started 2000. Like, you listen to, like, oh, we've been kicked out of every country for 2,000 years. You mean since Jesus Christ? So Jesus Christ is the problem, right? Because they say we're Shem, we're the Sem, we are the Shem, we are the light, not Jesus, not the Logos. We have to restrict your speech. You're not allowed to discuss. You're not allowed to try and find the truth. You're not allowed to discuss these ideas openly in an open forum with other human beings so that you can incline towards truth and you can present arguments and other people can counter your arguments and you can find out what the truth is. So what I'm saying is we need a society that puts the truth as the thing, as the object of the ultimate. And then everyone is compelled to try and find out what that is and discuss it openly and debate it. All right. Hope you enjoyed this video. Good afternoon, good evening, good night.